camera's on.
That's good.
And the audio's on. And we're all rocking and rolling.
Wow, we never need to do testing again. You just
never
nailed
need
everything.
to do testing.
Forgot to do testing and everything's just working.
Literally, like 4 seconds before we go, I suddenly look and Mason gets this very disturbed look where I go, wait a minute. Did I test the camera? Is the camera on?
And so we're both just staring at the screen and watch ourselves fade in.
There it is. It's on and it works. Oh my goodness. Well, now that stress is behind us, it's caucus time. There's no banter today. There's just stress as we both at the same time try to recover my failings here as the producer to hit the buttons and test them before we hit them.
There were no failings.
There was no failings.
There were only successes.
No, it was a failing as a producer, but a success in the production.
That's true, yeah.
Which means I am an accidental success? Is that how it's accidentally flawless?
Hey, flawless is flawless.
I know, but I think I've heard you, it was either you or your wife that described you one time, accidentally flawless, you know?
Describe me?
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Oh, boy. Well, welcome on in. It is Thursday. It's caucus time, and we've got a doozy today. A big topic that has a lot of divisions of definitions and statistics and different things we'd like to get into. As always, your hosts, Mason Mohan, Ryan Height, and we are going to guide you through it today. A very fun conversation that might get dicey a little bit here and there. We have some people to beat up on, and then we've got some other people to talk about, and then we've got some other people to talk about that are new to the first people. So I hope that you're already not confused. But if you are, go to unauthorizedcaucus.com and you will become unconfused by a wealth of information there. You can watch this program live every Thursday at noon. You can gather the old videos. You can get the podcast and look it up wherever you get your podcasts and download it. And of course, you can sign up for the all-important redacted email, all there at unauthorizedcaucus.com. Plus, we are live streaming. If you're a podcast listener, we live stream every Thursday. Come on and hop into the chat, man. Rumble goes crazy on fire. The YouTube people are that's like the fan club zone.
Yeah.
Our fan clubs
and the occasional hater.
And the occasional hate. That's true.
The haters come in on YouTube.
The haters come in on YouTube, which I guess the algorithms just still throw us out to the whoever's, because sometimes these folks show up angry, and I'm like, what did you think you were going to get? Did you not see what channel this is on?
Right.
But I mean, I guess you just get into the live function, you start clicking on stuff, and then you get mad, and that's what snowflakes do. They just get mad. And yeah, Mike, wasn't it Mike the last one we had who popped in there? Mike, come on back, Mike. You still haven't come in, and it's been a couple of weeks, buddy. Come back and talk. We'd love to talk it out. I mean, I'm being sarcastic, but come on in. Like I have a sarcastic tone, but we will actually engage you if you're willing to engage. So anyone, come on in.
Yeah, come fight us in the chat. Do it.
Yeah, fight us, man. And then, of course, I say man. I've just assumed his gender right there off the bat. I have shown my lack of wokeness.
Based on Mike's comment, he sounds like a Zer, purple hair, 5,000-pound type dude.
Even then, called him a dude.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm not going to play by his silly rules.
We've both misgendered him. Anyway, if you're a non-fan, send out the Rumble link and let your friends in so that we can have some fun, spicy conversations. If you're a good fan of the show, Rumble's where it's at, man. If you're not there, go on over to Rumble and have fun in the chat. But we are here today with a big old topic, and this is one actually you suggested, and I gleefully said yes, and we ran down the rabbit hole of research and all kinds of different things. So we have pulled together, you may have seen our title, and you know I love our titles. I love our titles. We have definitely experienced what I would call the swift shift in America, and it is a terrible phenomenon that has plagued us too many years now.
Well, it's not just America.
It's not just, it's true, it's internationally plagued the world.
Because this isn't as much of a political topic as it is a civilizational topic.
That is absolutely accurate. The swift shift you may have picked up from our side humor and sarcasm and apparent disgust. The Taylor Swift shift in America. No, we're not here to talk about music or the Eras Tour or whatever. Am I allowed to say that, or does she have that copyrighted? I have a feeling, just like the NFL, she's going to come after me if I use certain terms. But that is a huge cultural phenomenon, not just in America, but across the world. And very interestingly, it does tie into the huge topic of birth rates. Birth rates and nations, fertility rates, as we've discovered here before we started, there is a difference. We're going to go into a little bit of that. This is something that gets talked about a lot. Elon Musk has been talking about it. Lots of not just conservative voices, the traditional right-wing voices, are talking more about birth rates because it matters. Are you replicating yourself, or is your society dying.
Right.
And we've talked about this, I feel like, not recently it has been a big topic here in America. Not for everyone, but for some people. So we should talk about it. But I feel like this has long been a topic about other countries like Japan and a few other places. We have seen this coming down the pike. But guess what? It's been coming here, and we're starting to see some of the real effects of it, and we got to weigh some things out, especially when it comes to other policies in America. So we want to dive into that here, and I think that's going to be our good long topic for the day. But let me start off with one thing. You'll hear, and this was my confusion and my question, so let me settle it for you. There are two phrases I seem to hear concurrently: birth rate and fertility rate. And I thought, what does this mean? Is this the same thing? I seem to see people use them interchangeably. Definitionally speaking, the birth rate is referring to essentially births per 1,000 individuals. So basically, this is the number of births per 1,000 individuals in a given population in a given year. Fertility rate is referring to the average number of children that a woman would have in her lifetime. So, births per 1,000 individuals inside of a certain group, children per woman measured differently. So that kind of specifically focuses on the reproductive age and fertility rates of women and just all live births, both male and female, and how that works with the population, both male and female. That's what those are. So they're kind of related, but they are kind of different. If you see people using them interchangeably, now you know. It's not actually interchangeable, but it is definitely related. I can see where that goes. And that is one of my questions when we started in on this endeavor. So there's a definitional laying down of the law for you there. Since we still do that here on this show instead of just making it up as we go. Unless we decide we want to make it up and then we run with that. But that's a different topic, and it has nothing to do with pronouns, which are grammatically locked in. Newsflash, if you didn't know. So what was on your mind when you kicked off this conversation? This relates into mass immigration.
Yeah.
And that was one of the specific things you mentioned to me. But do you want to give an overview of, I know Elon has touched on this issue and a couple of other things. You want to give us an overview of why does birth rate even matter to a citizen, citizen? It is to citizens, to a civilization. Why does that matter? How does that affect? What turning point are we seeing in the U.S.? And then maybe plug a couple of the topics it plugs into, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah. So birth rate and fertility rate, they're both extremely important, and they're interrelated with one another. Those are two of the most basic markers of a healthy society, a society that's growing, that is getting bigger in the future. You want a society with lots of young people, because young people have lots of options. They can do more things. They can expand different sectors of the economy and of the culture. And when some of you may have seen, there's population charts. You can find them for different countries online. And there's just a line down the middle, and on one side it has girls, the other side it has boys, and it just shows like the amount of them per age group. And a healthy growing society has a population, well, I think they're called population pyramids, because a healthy society has one that looks like a pyramid, where there's way more young people. There's 0 to 18, most of that, and then like 18 to whatever. You want more young people in your society. That means your society is growing, your people are healthy, your country's getting bigger, there's going to be more people contributing, being productive. When it becomes flat on the sides, when the top and the bottom are the same size, then you have a serious problem, because that means you are not growing, and maybe growth is or isn't a good thing. I mean, maybe it's good to just stay at the way it is, but and that's a conversation to be had. But when it's not growing, then there's not as many people contributing to your society, and that comes with a litany of issues. I mean, just think of Social Security that we have here. If there aren't as many young people to contribute to the Ponzi scheme, then it's going to start to topple over.
Yeah.
So there are many issues, and there's a lot of factors that have led to the decline in the birth rate, because the birth rate is low. It's historically low across the developed world. Places like Japan. Well, China, yeah, they're having problems, but China, South Korea have extremely low fertility and birth rates. It's remarkably low, like comically below replacement rate. I think the replacement birth rate is like 2.1.
Right, which is just over. I mean, if the birth rate replacement, you think about that, that's two individuals.
Yeah, two parents.
A male and a female. Yeah. A male and a female, you hear that? A male and a female have 2.1 children.
Right.
They are technically replacing themselves, replicating themselves. Don't ask me where the 0.1 comes from. Maybe that's just
it's an average.
Yeah, it's the average.
Yeah.
Welcome to numbers, but not specific humans. There's not 0.1% of a baby, but you know what you get what we mean. 2 for 2. You have 2 kids. You've replaced yourselves on the planet. But that's not growth. That's just replication rate.
Right.
Sorry, I'm here for color commentary.
2.1 is growth. 2.1.
Oh, that's
growth.
right. Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. 2.1 is growth. That's the average.
2 is just replacement.
2 is
when
2
you're
is
below
replacement
2,
rate.
your society is shrinking.
Shrinking.
More people are dying than are being born, and that means that more and more the population pyramid is going to start looking like a population cone. It's going to be upside down, like a funnel, and that's not good. Now, there's a lot of reasons that this has been going on, that this has been happening. There's, and I blame the left for a lot of it. The rise of rampant use of birth control and abortion. That's very popular in the United States and Europe. Telling women to be career focused first. Oh, don't worry about a family. You can do that later. And then next thing they know, they're 40 years old, and like, sure, they have $1 million in the bank, but they have no husband, no kids. They will never have any descendants, and they are going to die alone. And that's extremely depressing.
And this is, I'm going to put a pin, we don't have to talk about that now, I'll let you go, but I want to put a pin in that because this very specifically relates to Phyllis Schlafly's legacy. I want to talk about that for a minute. Go ahead with you.
Yes.
Keep going.
So there's the feminist propaganda, there's climate change propaganda. They're saying, oh, well, more mouths to feed means we have to increase the factory farms, and the cows are going to be farting more, and then there's going to be more methane in the environment, and then you're going to have to drive them to school, and your car is going to have to put more CO2 in the environment, and so there's lots of propaganda around that. Like, oh, maybe if you want to help the climate, you should have fewer kids. It's not enough to just recycle. You need to stop having kids. And that's a thing that people are saying. That's a thing climate change activists are saying, probably funded by Bill Gates and George Soros. And then just on a very basic level, it's bad for the economy. You don't have as many workers. Your GDP isn't going to grow because there aren't people doing the jobs needed. Your GDP per capita might go up if you have fewer people, but maybe not, because there's going to be more old people, more people retiring, less people working, and less people working very efficiently as people in the 20 to 40 range do. And so this ties into immigration pretty specifically because the UN even has a paper on this, and people talk about this. This is, part of the reason people are saying, oh, we need immigration. We need lots of immigrants, legal or illegal, just bring them all in, because we need more workers in our economy. We need people to do these jobs and fill these spots in our economy. And that's a solution. It's not a very good solution. It has way more drawbacks than it has upsides, because like you're essentially just replacing the society, which is really what kicked off this whole discussion over the last week, because people are talking about the Great Replacement. Vivek talked about it at the Republican debates. It's getting a lot more traction, this idea that the left is trying to just replace Americans with non-Americans so they can keep their power, because immigrants vote overwhelmingly Democrat. Phyllis was writing about this, in the 90s, before people had really caught on to this, but because even legal immigration dooms conservatism. Which,
there's a huge, by the way, I'll give you a tidbit. You better be on the redacted email this week, because I'm going to give a link to one of Phyllis's white papers that she did, a big old thick thing that was how illegal and mass legal immigration, how mass legal and illegal immigration have doomed the Republican Party.
It wasn't even about illegal, because that's
no, but it was. She named both.
Okay.
I think the title of the paper was how illegal and mass legal immigration have doomed the Republican Party, I think, or maybe the conservative movement.
Doom a conservative Republican Party.
Was it? Okay, yes. Doom a. I was trying to remember the specific name, but I mean, she very well lays out the case why this isn't just illegal immigration that we all have an issue with. Mass legal migration, i.e. cheap labor getting shoved in through visas and the overstay, et cetera, and so on. This is a problem, electorally speaking, for us as a conservative Republican Party, to your point. And she goes, very, very good. And she was saying that at a time when it was not in vogue in the conservative side to even talk about legal immigration, because we were in the Bush years at that point, I believe. And it was still, oh yeah, that's
It's
fine.
only just
we
now
love
that people are talking about that.
Now people are starting to talk about it. Phyllis talked about it 20 almost years ago and put it out in a white paper. She talked about it before then. But anyway, again, there's another.
And ironically,
Phyllis
it's
I'll put that in there.
Vivek and immigrant talk that busted this into the Overton window. But the reason we're talking about it this week, and the reason a lot of people are talking about it this week, is because earlier this week, Ava, crazy Dutch last name, or some sort of Nordic last name that I will not even try to pronounce, gave a speech at CPAC Hungary. I didn't even know they had a CPAC about the Great Replacement, and posted it on X. Elon responded, and when Elon responds, then it's just going to be the talk of the week. And he said, the problem with the, quote, Great Replacement theory is that it fails to address the foundational issues of low birth rates. Record low birth rates are leading to population collapse in Europe and even faster population collapse in most of Asia. Immigration is low in Asia, so there is no replacement going on. The countries are simply shrinking away. If this doesn't turn around, then any countries on Earth with low birth rates will become empty of people and fall into ruin, like the remains we see of many long-dead civilizations. And
I love it when he really leaves so much room you can't quite tell what he's saying.
Right.
Yeah,
and some people pointed out that he's kind of, saying, he's not really describing a problem with the Great Replacement theory, even though he's saying that this is a problem with it. He's more so saying that, okay, solving the Great Replacement.
It's more than that.
Yeah, solving that doesn't solve the birth rate issue.
The Great Replacement is a part of this conversation, but there is also a bigger conversation to be had about birth rates as they exist in and of themselves.
The Great Replacement is a proposed solution by the left to the birth rate issue.
Right, which it's not a solution at all.
Right.
Because, I mean, they're doing this and this. They are depopulating.
Right. If you replace all the Americans with
other places
Somalians who, just because they breed more, it's no longer America. It's just big Somalia.
Right, and that's and here's where I jump in and say this is an interesting dichotomy to talk about, because this is the electoral side of it, is the Great Replacement theory. That is specifically an electorally thought out move by the left, is my idea of it, because this is how we can ship in voters for ourselves and ensure that conservative Republicans, traditional Americans, whatever name you want to put on it, the people who hold the traditional values of America, immigrant or not, those people will never have a say in national politics again, period. We have just completely outdone the vote. We don't even have to cheat anymore, because we cheated the immigration system and brought a bunch of people in who were loyal to us, because we brought them here and then immediately started the incentive programs and welcome here, here's your voter card, thanks for voting for us, and completely solidifying it. But greater than that is what I call depopulation. And this isn't anything new. This has been around for a long time. In fact, I remember Phyllis talked about this quite a bit. And hopefully this is an appropriate place. I'm not going to break your train of thought. To say, Phyllis talked about, and you might know, there was the 1968 book, The Population Bomb. And there's a very famous book at the time, which was actually a little bit of a driving force behind some of the Republican Party politics. You might not know this. Pre-Roe v. Wade, which was 1973, the population bomb, this emphatic idea that overpopulation was going to lead to chaos, famine, all kinds. It's like the climate crisis before. It was the population crisis before the climate crisis was in vogue.
Which is just like an updating of Thomas Malthus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was actually fairly popular among the Republican Party, and as a result, abortion was not necessarily frowned upon in the same way that it is. And Phyllis Schlafly, starting in 1973, Roe v. Wade, of course, 1972, the ERA kicked off, which just brought a whole new element to the social side of issues in Republican Party politics. By the 1980s, Phyllis had made it synonymous to be pro-life and Republican. That was not the case 20 years before.
Right.
20 years before, there were many subscribers to this population bomb theory, this overpopulation is going to cause. But this ideology, in my mind, depopulation is an ism. It's an ideology on the left, one of many. And there are several adherents to it that, whether for the sake of power or for the sake of perceived resources or whatever it is, there is a movement to depopulate the earth. Really, there is. Yeah. And we have seen the effects of this. This was some of the underpinnings of the radical feminist movement that Phyllis fought in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Because what are we doing essentially? You're not, to Phyllis's point, you're not giving women more choices and more freedom. You're actually taking away my choice and freedom to be a stay-at-home wife. You're trying to demand that I get out into the workforce. That's what the result of these things that you're pushing isn't more freedom. It's fewer choices for me.
Right.
And also, in the meantime, not just with the freedom and choice side of things, you are devaluing the age-old, respected position of choosing to be a wife and a mother. Like, you have completely destroyed the value behind this. You have destroyed it in the minds of young women, as that was holding you back. It was a restriction, not it was a liberation and a purpose that continued on. The world does not continue without moms.
Right.
Period. To the point that we're talking about here. That was, I mean, I haven't pulled up the graph of numbers to look back and see where the real decline started down in America. But I mean, I know it accelerated greatly as a result of this radical wave of feminism that swept through America in the 60s and 70s particularly. That is where we started to see leave the home, work out in the workforce, get your degrees. Not that there's anything wrong with a woman doing that or men doing that, but in the process, what a lot of people don't realize happened is the ugly part that came with that is a real devaluing. You're going for a graph, right? A real devaluing of the role of motherhood, which is very central to womanhood, Phyllis Schlafly said. And I think is, again, it's not far-fetched. It's extremely traditional until about the last 40 years in America and really the last 100 years around the world. That's a huge deal that has, this is what is underpinning a lot of this. So there's, the Great Replacement and these different things we talk about. The depopulation, though, has been there and this is a cultural issue we've been fighting and really has been purposefully pushed upon us for the purpose of depopulating America. I would argue that is accurate. Even if none of them have ever said it out loud, I feel like enough of them have basically said the quiet part out loud. We know by now that is at least one motivation and movement for several folks over on the left.
Right. Yeah, and I'd like to add that depopulationism is an ideological aspect of the left, but we should not get it. Well, it's tied up with, and we should not throw the baby out with the bathwater here, or maybe we should. I think it's a conversation worth having, but that it's not just an ideology on its own. It's a response to a perceived fact, and I think that talking about Malthus is really important for this conversation, because if you're not familiar, I think most people are, but Thomas Malthus thought, he was writing in the 18th century, and he thought, okay, because our population is growing exponentially and our resource growth is geometric or algebraic, I can't remember, it's been too long since I was in college and it's only been like a year. It's been too long since I've taken a math class, but because one is exponential and one
Geometric.
is not. Yeah, okay. So because resource growth is geometric, then we're going to have an issue where we don't have enough resources for the whole population, and that's going to be a bad thing. And it's been pretty easy to just say time and time again, okay, he was wrong. He was wrong. He was wrong. There were two economists that had a bet where they were they based it on the price of this basket of different materials, and they were like, okay, well, if Malthus is right, the price overall will go up. If he's wrong, it will go down. It was like raw materials, adjusted for inflation, obviously. And the guy betting against the Malthusian hypothesis won. Paul Ehrlich, I think his name is, with the population bomb, is just another instantiation of Malthusianism. You could even say that Thanos from the Avengers movies is Malthusianism.
There's your cultural reference for the day, folks. We've just tied it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
And Taylor Swift.
And Taylor Swift.
We expect this video to go viral. We have just mentioned two very popular things on the internet. Is that how that works? Am I showing my age by asking that question? You don't seem to know either.
It's all just random.
It's true.
But it's easy to dismiss Malthus, but I have been coming more and more around to the belief that Thomas Malthus has only been wrong so far, because there are a finite amount of resources on the earth. Scarcity is just a fact of economics. And so, let's throw out an insane number, like 100 trillion people on Earth. I don't think we can support that unless, we're just like literally living off of bug grinders, living in little pods, like, literally in the Matrix, that just everywhere. I think that because it's just like an ecological fact that, like, you look at like wolves in a forest, there is a carrying capacity of that forest with the resources around. And what's interesting is that one thing Thomas Malthus couldn't foresee because he just didn't live long enough is that the Earth's population isn't just purely exponential. It kind of creates this S shape where it's big growth, but then it starts to top out as it gets closer to the carrying capacity, which does mean that we'll get closer and closer to overall just having a replacement birth rate. Like we're just going to approach that as an asymptote on the top end. But I think that it's my wondering is like, is it even possible for us to blow past that? And if it is, we will have a worldwide economic crisis.
And at that point, you're asking, in my opinion, I listen to that and I say, well, yeah, that's one of those things that this could technically be true. But also, how many layers of hypothetical and extreme examples are we giving when we have no concept that we'll ever reach that rate or that it'll, I mean, I don't know. So far in the, 6 to 7,000 of human, where my young creationist Earth people at, and so far in the 6 to 5 to 6,000 years of human history that we have seen a explosion within the last few. The population has definitely not just slowly crept up over time. It has been a recent.
Right, but then
there's a huge.
It's going
flat.
But
then it goes flat. So my question is though, like you give an interesting example, wolves in the forest. There's only so many resources at a certain point. Yeah, but this is why there is the very interesting balance of nature where there's a predator for the wolves, and then there's a this and there's a that, and we've seen this as we have meddled in forests here in particularly the Pacific Northwest. You take out one part of the equation and you start to see an imbalance. You reintroduce it and you start to see a balance happen. There is a balance to the natural order around us that we don't fully grasp and understand, and we can't really predict. So in that sense, I look at it and say, well, sure. I mean, if you were to hypothesize some ridiculous number, but we have no idea. 200 years ago, when people were hypothesizing about this, they did not understand the modern technology we have in growing food. They could have maybe guessed that might happen, but they were also guessing at population.
Right.
So realistically, these folks are, and again, it is, like Malthus and others,
technology is what he was missing in his equation.
Right, but that's the thing. It's still an equation, and it doesn't mean it's completely illogically wrong. It's just that in an equation, in a hypothesis, it's just that. It's a guess.
Right.
There is so much that we don't know. So to your point, sure, maybe, absolutely, but the reality, bringing it back down from the academic more to the practical, which maybe someone would argue that academics is practical, but you know what I mean. Like the loftier academic like considerations, bring it back down to the practical. What we have seen is people employing a crazed, whether it's the population bomb or Greta Thunberg worrying about cow farts. Like we have seen this crazed movement of desperation that apocalypse is now, which is completely unfounded, completely erratic, and also completely used by many to destroy humanity as we know it in certain areas, and shift cultures and completely upend social and cultural norms across the world without just cause. Like it's not even a sane hypothesis. It is the taking of people who were maybe more in the hypothetical world, and let's take that and run with it. Like Charles Darwin. Darwin might have been, just hypothesizing about his theory of natural selection and this and that and the other. But when you take that into your own hands and say, okay, everyone, we're going to have the purge night because natural selection's a real thing. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's not even what that guy meant.
Right.
Like now you've created this whole new thing that I get to fight and yell at because that's not even that.
Right.
That we could talk about, this we can't. So to your point, there's a lot here to consider in this realm, but there are now a lot of bad actors who have moved that forward completely outside of anything Malthus and into its own segment of degradation and filth.
Right.
Ideologically speaking.
I guess my point then is that I'm not particularly worried about low birth rates because I do think we were intelligently designed, and I think the way that we all work together as a human species is intelligently designed. And like any population of animals in a given environment, we have a carrying capacity, and we will kind of automatically not blow past that unless we can find a way to do that without like starving ourselves. As we've done time and time again with technology. So I don't think that low fertility is the primary concern because, well, because of a couple things. I mean, I think it was Curtis Yarvin who said a few years ago that the side that is like castrating itself and killing its kids cannot win. All the people I know that are still having kids, they're not on the left, they're on the right. You know, the right is above replacement rate. I mean, that'd be interesting if you did like a breakdown of like political alignment and the fertility rate for the two sides. But I mean, that's why the left needs these immigrants.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's only a matter of time until we just completely outpopulate them.
Right.
Naturally. That's what's happening.
So what I'm more concerned about is mass migration than low birth rates.
Yes.
Battling off mass migration as a proposed solution to low birth rates, that is the worst possible solution.
And again, it's like adopting the excuse of, well, we should just kill babies in the womb because we might have famine if we overpopulate. It's like, whoa, we could talk about this overpopulation and famine thing, but dude, back off this. Consider this is an excuse to do something you want. Well, to devalue human life, to whatever you want to insert. Same thing here. You know, if we could talk about birth rates all day long, and that's a whole different conversation. Then you're just going to run to a proposed solution that's not actually probably got to do with anything about this. You're conveniently using this hypothetical crisis to jam through your political will. That's what I would agree with you. That's what I would say, but I agree with you. That's what's happening with mass migration. Birth rate is maybe concerning and something to certainly talk about and look at, but they are using that potential to shove through the mass migration. And by the way, can we pause for a second? They're using it to shove through the mass migration agenda, the mass immigration agenda, bringing more people in. Can we have a quick conversation about politically correct terms? Because I catch myself saying this. We're going to have this in front of you all too, okay?
Okay.
Migrant versus immigrant. Part of me wants to not say migrant, even though definitionally speaking, that's not inaccurate.
I want to say invader.
I agree. See, that's the thing. I am, using the word invader. You are picking a term more appropriately, loading the intent or the result on, not just a technically accurate term. I feel like the use of the term migrant is this softening of illegal immigration, illegal aliens. Their response to us calling people aliens, which is a technical legal term for people here. Go back. It's not that we're being mean. This is a real word, and it really has a very specific legal and social use. It's been used this way. You're an alien in this land. Blah blah blah. Come on. But I feel like the use of the word migrant has been so very specifically brought out to soften that word as a politically correct feature. I hate it when I catch myself saying it, but I hear it so much. And it's technically fewer syllables than immigrant. I catch myself doing it, and I try to stop and correct. Do you feel the same way that I do on that one?
I haven't really thought about it.
You just use them interchangeably?
And I mean, when I'm saying I'm against all migrants, against all immigrants, like
your point's been made.
My point's been made. It doesn't really matter what word I use.
That's a valid point. I just wonder, because I catch myself saying that, and that's one of those, like, hold on, this is a loaded word that I definitely noticed. It's one of those news anchor things where you hear like the news, all these local news stations saying the same exact thing over and over. We've seen those videos online. They're creepy. If you haven't seen them, email us at
the Soros Network at work.
Yeah, the Soros Network at work. Email us if you haven't seen those. We'll send you a copy. But I feel like all of a sudden, just everywhere, the word migrant suddenly was the in vogue word to use. And I've tried. It's like I don't want to use it now. I don't want to use it now because you're using it.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out, is it a psyop or is it something that I need to just back off of? But
I don't think it's a big deal.
I do. Okay, fine. Yeah. Mason says it's not a big deal.
I think that there are.
So when Mason turns out to be wrong and we all played into the psyop, you all can blame Mason.
Well, I'm not psyoped. What I'm saying, get all migrants out of here.
Are you sure?
Know? Yeah, I am sure because I'm still saying
the CIA's mind control isn't telling you to say that.
Go back to Mexico. Go back to Guatemala, wherever you're from. Go back.
I've invoked the CIA again. And there goes this week's episode numbers.
Yep.
Oh boy, and I can hear the helicopter now. I agree with you, though. I agree that this, the population, it's an interesting lead up, and that's an interesting issue to talk about.
But how does this tie into Taylor Swift?
Is being used. Well, it ties into Taylor Swift. Oh boy, John, and we can give them credit for full of this. John and Andy Schlafly had their big anti-Tay-Tay fest in the Phyllis Schlafly Report weekly column last year, October 24, 2023. We'll post this in the notes as well. But
And they had a new column on the same
they do. They
similar
have
subject.
They have a new column, and I've got it pulled up here. You're talking about April 2, right?
Yeah.
The new one, yeah. So there's two columns. First of all, the Taylor Swift comes in. We're talking about the disappearing motherhood. Who's to blame? John and Andy Schlafly lay that at the feet of Barbie and Taylor Swift, basically. But I mean, not entirely. As examples, though, their point is that this fertility crash, as we've seen these headlines over the last year, talking about U.S. birth rates, and even places like Utah, which have traditionally had way more than the rest of us, they fell by a third in the last 15 years, and there's been some pretty interesting trends. So they're talking about the Barbie phenomenon, the Taylor Swift phenomenon, and this basically young women adopting. As I said before, we talked about this move of feminism. You don't need kids to be fulfilled and be a woman. You don't need to be married. Go out and have your career and this and that and the other. There was always an option, a choice for women. But to the point, to Phyllis Schlafly's point, that was pushed as the answer, and motherhood was the problem. That was essentially what the cause of feminism was teaching people. But sure enough, Taylor Swift, John and Andy point out, nearly 34 years old. Asked if when she turned 30, whether she wanted to have children. She replied, "I don't really think men are asked that question when they turn 30, so I'm not going to answer it now." We have these little feminista lines that come through. But sure enough, I mean, you look down the interesting statistics, and you see, the percentage of women under 45 today. The percentage of women under 45 having children has fallen to barely half today. A lot of other numbers are just taking nose dives when you look across different demographics in different places, and it really is interesting because the decline of motherhood as a respected profession and life calling in America is definitely happened at the same time. It's almost synonymous with this rise of the female empowerment, older women not getting married, not having kids, getting more degrees, getting more. And again, there's nothing wrong with women having jobs outside the home or getting a degree. I'm not saying that at all. But there has definitely been a decline in one area and a sharp increase in almost everyone going the other direction. And as a result, we're seeing an incredibly interesting cultural shift. And of course, this cultural shift is tied into the birth rates. So just this month, last month, it's May now. Can you believe it? It's May.
Yeah. I almost can't believe it.
It's hard. I almost can't either. Almost can't. It's May now, but April 2, they had a column talking about Italy, South Korea, same crisis that they're facing, declining birth rates, fallen far below what's needed to sustain a population and economy. And what Italy has lost they have dropped 34.2% since 2008. So the average number of children per woman has declined to 1.2. Which is way below the 2.1 necessary. To your point, this might potentially be cyclical, but nonetheless, this is where Elon Musk comes in and lots of other considerations. So, John and Andy are talking about the policies and promotion of encouraging American families to become families again, families early, and to have more children. Trump himself, you can argue about, Trump's divorce rate and different things, but Trump has 5 kids, and the 5 kids, they all talk to each other and they work with each other. This is actually, as much as the divorce is common in America, the 5 of them actually talking to each other and working together is fairly uncommon by some American standards. So even there, in the Trump administration, we get to see a little bit of an example of this with some interesting caveats. But that's John and Andy's point is a pro-birth message fits well with the Republican platform of creating good jobs, of creating a healthy and sustainable economy, of creating healthier and sustainable communities. We've lost a lot of that as our world has gotten wider, and this is my own personal point. As our world has gotten wider, travel and technology, we have lost a huge sense of community in America, and also as the American family has been destroyed, we have lost a huge sense of community in America, and I think that's really contributed. My personal opinion, and I'm not really even getting into all the offshoots, so maybe this doesn't fully make sense, but I think that has personally, I personally think that has contributed, the breakdown of the family unit has contributed to the general nastiness and polarization that we see in America. I think a lot of that is lost, and we had it back when we had larger families. It's not the only factor, obviously.
Well,
that's one of the big things.
It's one of the
missing.
most important. It is. even as far back as Aristotle, we understood that the family is the foundational unit of a properly functioning human society because it's a microcosm of society.
It is.
So if the family is disordered, you should start to expect disorder everywhere.
It is the first, and this is with the eternal Christian perspective, which is, the right perspective.
Amen.
Thank you. This is the first fundamental, foundational institution established by God on the earth, outside of his relationship with man. This is it. Upon everything else, everything else was built upon this first building block. And from there, you see groups of families, you see churches and the governance of churches, you see civil governments. All of these things have arisen, but the very first block between the relationship with God and man and the rest of everything we see is the family. And that has always been in that place of honor and that integral spot in American society until recently. And look what's happening.
Yeah.
There's, again, maybe this isn't the only thing, the one thing that we could fix and would fix America. There's a lot we need to fix America, but this is a biggie. And I think that's why it has long been the biggie of the left to destroy. Through abortion, through feminism, through you name it. The family has been at the center of all these attacks, from courts, from the family court system. And Phyllis was always hot on the trail of all of it, because from all these different places, the American family was destroyed. Who did it? Lots of people, lots of places, and all of it leads back to a very humanist, very depopulationist, very fill in the blank. These false religions. It is very, very interesting, of leftism, of radical Marxism, dialectical materialism, humanism. You want to give it a name. Destroying the family has been one of the key parts of this, and that is one of the key things that we need to propose and put forward as our solution to rebuild. And it's not just about birth rates, to your point. It's about a lot more than that culturally.
Right, but that's strong families are critical to a healthy society, and that's why countries like Hungary are, John and Andy talked in their column from last month about how Hungary's plan to, they give $30,000 to newlywed families, and if they have 3 kids, it's a loan, but if they have 3 kids, they just forgive the loan completely.
Right.
Which maybe that's a little bit too much of a big government thing for us principled conservatives over here in America. But also, like, if you're going to use big government to do something, being pro-family rather than anti-family is,
Right. I can't think of it. Here it is. Do you have anything else you want to click in, or we should let's wrap it up. I love this line. This is out of, and again, I'll put this into the notes. Go and sign up on unauthorizedcaucus.com. Sign up for the list. You'll get the redacted email. You want to get it today because there's some really good stuff, historical and current, that we're putting in it. But this is it right here. That this big misleading of young people, misleading of students. The studies are showing us tons of people on average. More women are spending time in higher education. Men are too. And then the more that happens for particularly women statistically, but for both, the less they want to have children. Students are misled, John and Andy Schlafly say, into thinking that advancement in educational degrees and corporate America will be more rewarding to them than having children, when it is family life that brings greater long-term benefits.
True.
Nothing else is going to fulfill like God ordered it that way on purpose, because that's more fulfilling than any of the rest of these things, which are great. They're good. They provide for your family. They are fun. They're fulfilling. I'm glad I have my degree. I'm glad I work here. I'm glad I work with you most of the time. I'm glad I'm talking with you all.
I'm always glad I work with you.
I'm just kidding. Okay? I'm glad. I was worried at first.
I'm always glad.
I was like, here we go.
Every morning I wake up and I'm like, I get to see Ryan today.
That is 100% not your first thought. You know why? Because you have a beautiful wife and a tiny little son that you wake up to.
That's true.
I can tell you what you think about first every morning. And I'm probably right, or at least close to right.
Family.
Yeah, I was about to say family. Like, you wake up thinking about Jesus first. That's fine. That is an acceptable answer for me being wrong. But no, that's the most fulfilling thing. I love all these other things I do. You do too. Mason does too. But that's not what fulfills us. What fulfills us outside of our relationship with Jesus Christ is our family. That is the first institution the Lord gave us and the greatest gift he's given us. We have to restore that in America if we're going to restore America.
Amen.
I don't have anything else to say. That's it. You done heard it all, and you done heard it here, and you better done tell your friends. Better do. Go tell your people.
Go tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Come to unauthorizedcaucus.com. Share this one with them so that you too can get on the conversation, get in on the conversation. Man, I'm just excited. With your friends and family, coworkers, have those conversations, start them up, see where they lead. Go to unauthorizedcaucus.com, like, share, and subscribe wherever you are, and we will see you next week on the next one. If it's Thursday and it's noon, it's caucus time. That was your time to hop in.
I was about to say it, but then you said it.
Too late.